Hi, and welcome to another episode of Silver Goose Farm Stories. I'm your host, Mama Goose, aka Maria Silva. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about footwear, which is a pretty critical piece of attire here on the farm, and one that I've spent a lot of time researching and experimenting with and failing, and trying to get the right fit, so to speak. So here's a piece of Maria trivia. I'm a pretty cheap person, sometimes embarrassingly so. I knew that my husband was the right one for me because I think we were out somewhere like in the city and a price of something was marked as $20. And I think for normal people that wouldn't have been a problem, but my husband looked at me and he was like, "You know what I can get for $20? That's like 4 burritos." And that just solidified in my heart that this is a man that appreciates food and a bargain. So it was definitely true love. But seriously, I have a hard time spending a large sum of money on something that I'm going to slog through poop in. And, for a long while, it wasn't as critical of a concern here on the farm, just because, that toughest work that my boots had to endure those first few years when we were setting up our homestead was kind of just getting me from point A to B in our garden and occasionally going through a puddle or so. So nothing like really taxing. I had these like $10 boots that I'd gotten from like a nondescript seller on Amazon that I'd had for several years that had done the job just fine. They worked because there were no seams in them. It was like a solid piece of molded rubber that I could get my foot in. So they weren't comfortable and they were super heavy and clunky, but they were waterproof. And they worked really great until I decided to stomp out the ashes of a burn pile one year and literally melted a hole through the sole of one of them. It was a little devastating for me because I spent the next couple of years kind of struggling with many boot failures at the beginning of every wet season because I didn't want to shell out more than like $20, $25 for a pair of boots. But when you buy rain boots at that price point, there's a bit of quality that's lacking. So I'd buy a pair at the beginning of winter time, only to discover that a few months in, my socks were wet. There was a seam that had popped through, or if they did survive the winter, they were definitely like too brittle or too worn out to wear through the summertime, which is also an important time to wear boots. And so my husband was like, just spend the money and get a good pair of boots, Maria. Like, come on. And the wear on the boots was only increasing because as we got more animals, we were slogging through more mud and manure, and we were like building infrastructure. So we were always outside and spending a lot more demanding hours on our feet. And so, I had to really break out of that mentality of needing to spend more than 10 burritos worth of money on, what was literally going to be poop shoes. I was really struggling with that little mental wall that I'd put up for myself. But here's the literal tipping point. I had gone to our nearby Tractor Supply a couple years ago, and they had some really cute boots on sale. I think they were like teal with like rainbow chickens all over them. And something ridiculous and adorable like that. And I think they were from a mildly recognizable brand, at least for me. And so I kind of, was very easily convinced that this was going to be the great footwear purchase of the year. You know, I was going to look cute and they were going to be functional and they were on sale, like the trifecta of positive points. So I threw them into my shopping cart and happily drove home with them and decided that their first test and the first task that I was going to do with them was to muck out the cow pen after what had been a particularly rainy weekend. So here I go. I clomp out to the cow pen with, pushing my wheelbarrow. I've got my shovel. I got my pitchfork. When I open up the gate to the cow pen and I get 2 steps in, shut the door behind me before my wheelbarrow just totally sinks 6-7 inches into the super soft, sludgy poop mud slurry. And I turn around and take a step forward and there aren't a lot of rocks on our property, especially sharp rocks, but for whatever reason, that day, my foot found the one sharp rock on our property, and it just immediately ripped through the side seam of my new rainbow chicken poop boots. And so immediately this cold, wet, sludgy feeling fills up my foot and I take another step to try and extricate myself, but the other foot was firmly stuck in the mud and I was tugging super hard and I hear that slurping, shucking sound of the mud refusing to let go of my foot. And my, I do one last big tug to get myself free, and my muddy, poopy, socked foot falls out of my boots, but I've overextended myself and am now stuck in between the arms of the wheelbarrow that has also decided at this point to lose its balance. So I fall hard. Actually, softly, because we're still in the cow pen. It's still muddy. It's still poopy, but now I am, totally covered in it. So I pick myself up with as much dignity and grace as one can manage in this situation. And I'm very thankful that no one was outside with me at the time. But I walk back to the house with one boot on, one sock totally filthy and nasty, and just, the one side of me completely covered in sludge. And that was the day that I vowed to invest in a good pair of boots. Quantity of burritos be damned. So I'm going to insert a disclaimer that I'm not trying to sway anyone towards any particular brand of boots. This isn't any sort of a sponsored material, because that would be, a success for us. But but I'm just trying to convey this story of my footwear journey. So I got inside. Well, I hosed off outside first, got inside, took a shower, and just spent a great deal of time scrolling through homesteading and farming forums to see what everyone's opinions were. And the homesteading community is pretty frugal in and of itself, so I was kind of happy to see a similar story coming up over and over again of people who had kind of lived in the price point of shoes that I was currently struggling with, and then their aha moment of well, this is just going to be an investment. So I kind of, based on what I had read and reviews and things like that, settled on 3 brands that, kept coming up, which were Tough Boots, Muck Boots, and Bog Boots. Those were the names that got repeated pretty frequently. I quickly sort of took Tough off of the running just because they have that seam on the outside. It's not a solid shoe form. And I think they're mostly for ships and marine kind of lifestyle, which is very different than what I needed it to be. And both the remaining muck boots and bog boots had really similar reviews, but I eventually went with the latter because they were on sale and old habits die hard, and I had a coupon code. And the women's boots came in some really cute patterns. And I'm still a sucker for flashy footwear. And so, the combination of the coupon and I got my boots in like this really cute burgundy color. So that was what sold me. Even with like the coupon though, it was over $75 for a pair of boots, and that's the most I'd ever spent on shoes ever in my life. But my husband told me to think of it as a science/math experiment. If they last more than 2 seasons, I've gotten my money's worth out of them. And so, this was just data collection for me at this point. The first thing I noticed about this type of quality footwear is that, or at this price point, I guess, was that they were really comfortable. And that's not something that I could say about any of like my cheaper boots that I'd gotten in the past. They were so nice to slip my feet into. And I opted for the boots with the tall leg shaft because of snake bite protection in the tall grass. The shoe part is like a solid piece, so no seams that can be broken, which is great. But the calf part is a waterproof neoprene material that has kind of these built-in handles, so I could just tug them on and off if I need to. They feel clunky, but in a good way, like enough solid material separating my foot from all the dirty, poopy, painful stuff that are trying to hurt me from the outside, but not clunky enough to make me clumsy, if that makes sense. They're also a little bit lifted. I think I'm like 1.5 inches taller in them, but it's not like a heel. It's like a platform, so it's very comfortable. They're super easy to slip on and off, even with the tall leg shaft, but they do have like a little ridge on the heel part, so you can like kick them off with your toe. And they have traction lines on the bottom, which keep your feet from getting stuck in the mud, or at least not so much that you have to like struggle to get out of it. They are super easy to hose off if they get dirty, and they keep my feet warm in the winter and are super breathable in the summer. And the best part is they've lasted like 2 years, going on 3 years now, so definitely worth the investment, I guess. And I literally wear my boots every single day, like except when I'm going to church. I'm always in my boots. And so I'm really hard on them. Like I'm going through mud, I'm going over like terrain, I'm scooping through manure in the garden, and they've held up pretty great through all of it. So I guess my conclusion in this experiment is that no more cheap boots for me. At least my farm boots. My like casual wear, well, that habit is a little bit harder for me to break, and that's a completely different story and unrelated to farming. But I was pretty sold on investing in things that you're going to wear and work in regularly. So I bought a pair for my kids, my husband, and even my parents. They don't wear them nearly as often as I do because the rest of my family, minus my parents, they just kind of spend their days barefoot. But I can confidently say, going into their 3rd year of use, there's still a lot of life left in my pair. There are a few, to be honest, there are a few little cold spots that I've noticed around the toes, but my socks are still dry, and that's really the most important part. My husband is super pleased in himself for, making the suggestion that I, break out of my bad habits in the first place. And I'm just really glad that my feet don't have poop on them anymore. I'm sure the other reputable brands of boots are also fantastic. They've got really die-hard followings for a reason. But I'm happy with the shoes I'm in. And I just saw that they have the same model of boot I currently have, but now in like a floral leopard print. And that's pretty exciting for any future purchases that I might be having to make soon. So that's the story of my boots. They're a farmhouse staple for sure. What type of boots do you wear? And another like farm gear do you stand by? I would love to hear your opinions. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode on our podcast. We always appreciate you stopping by. If you have any questions or comments, please visit us on our website. We love to hear from you at silvergoosefamilyfarm.com or our email silvergoosefamily@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram if you want to follow all our current news and projects and happenings. Same handle, Silver Goose Family Farm. I hope to be able to talk with you all very soon. Thanks again. Bye.